Thank you, everyone. It is 10:30 and we are joined by Samantha Sheehan from the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. Thank you. You're welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Of course. Almost said happy Friday. It's not yet.
It's not, but happy May Day.
Yeah, happy May Day. Happy Creamy Day.
Bill doesn't want anyone to know.
He wants to be the first. I'll let you cut me in line, yeah.
Oh, Bill.
Don't. Talking about it live. Which actually, this is a good moment to let people know that our afternoon testimony was canceled. And so I might try to schedule something else, but we might not have anything after the floor. Did you share that? Sorry.
For the record, my name is Samantha Sheehan. I am the Municipal Policy and Advocacy Specialist for the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. As a reminder, our members are from all 247 municipalities in Vermont, including the cities and towns that you live in and represent, certainly. We have an annual, or sorry, a biannual, a pre-biennium practice of developing a list of municipal policies that are developed by the town and city officials who are our members, and then must be voted on by all members to become a priority of the LCT and an upcoming legislative session, upcoming legislative biennium. That process happened last summer, and in October, the VLCT 2025 and 2026 policies were voted on, unanimously supported by all members who are present at the annual meeting. And at the very top of the list was project-based tax increment financing authority. So we are thrilled to be at this late day, this May Day in the legislature today, talking to you about this concept, this policy concept, why it's so important, the positive impacts that it will have on your communities and communities across the state. And I will be referencing the word CHIP, but what we're going to be talking about are sort of the policy drivers that have brought us to identifying this need that municipalities have. So foundational to discussing the pros and cons of tax increment financing programs for housing, we have to really understand grand list growth, property valuation. I love that I get to follow PVR because they're such experts in this area. And once we're sort of talking from the same place there, then we can talk about the other things that tax increment financing programs do for a municipality. So the situation we're in right now is the top equation here, which is we are experiencing extreme housing scarcity. That has distorted the market as such that even properties that are declining because of a lack of upkeep or investment are experiencing rapid increase in the valuation of that property because there's no housing. So if you have a house for sale, you can ask for more money for it. So that is increasing the value of grand lists, but it is not increasing the tax capacity of the town or of the state's own education grand list, because property valuation is revenue neutral according to Vermont state law. When we build housing and address scarcity, the property revaluation also goes up, but it is not revenue neutral. It adds new tax revenue capacity to the municipal grand list and to the state education grand list that wasn't there before. So we are adding more people, more properties, more value on the grand list to spread the sort of burden of the cost of government. So when we're assessing background growth for the purpose of analyzing the potential future impacts of a tax increment program, it's problematic to look at grand list growth that comes only from a revaluation process. Because again, revaluation is tax revenue neutral. So the equalization study, which you're very familiar with, the CLA, is a method of property revaluation that is based on a fair market value. That revaluation through the equalization study does not change the amount of money going into the ed fund or into a municipal general fund. However, the development of new housing does.
I don't know if that's true. Can you tell me why you think that's true?
Yeah, we'll unpack it.
Okay.
Yeah. So the real annual municipal grand list growth is generally understood to be between 0.8% and 3%. Most municipalities in their budgeting process, which lags behind the grand list setting, so they have to start talking about what they think their revenue is going to be before they certify the grand list. So the number that most municipalities use in that local budgeting process is 1% or 2%. But it's really a range that goes below and above that. And like year by year, town by town. In the most recent BHFA housing needs assessment, the real number of growth from housing only, because there's growth from other types of development of other types of things like public parks and commercial buildings and, you know, additions to the the Patrick Leahy Burlington International Airport. The section of the grand list growth in that 0.8 to 3% range that's just from housing is 4%, 0.4%, sorry, 0.4% average per year statewide, according to VHFA's research. So now we're going to talk about why I believe this to be true, although for the record, many, many people understand this to be true who have to work with the grand list and with municipal tax setting. So I have two examples. I'm going to show you Burlington's example of, for the purpose of this discussion today, I'm going to say real grand list growth. So grand list growth from development, improvement, property improvement, investment, and how that has worked in the city of Burlington on the grand list over a long period of time. So in 2012, if I move my mouse, can you see it? If I go like this?
Okay,
great.
You need to stand up and gesture towards this.
Great. Sorry, I'm taking a sip of my electrolyte. So in this period, so this little number 11, or wait, sorry, 10, 11, 12. So this tall 143, this is the year 2012. The 10 years before that, the rolling average of new housing units was 61. In this section of time between 2012 and 2022, that rolling 10-year average went up 200%. So Burlington was able, and it is important to understand that Burlington is an outlier in its ability not just to build housing, but to sustain that, to increase rapidly and then sustain that rapid increase for more than a decade. Other towns achieve this rate of growth of 100%, 200%, 300%, but they might only hold it for a year, 2, 3 years. Burlington has now done this for most of, what did the mayor say yesterday, since the turn of the century. So understanding this is a rapid increase in the rate of construction, and then that sustains on a rolling average for more than a decade, we might think, wow, that Burlington grand list must look really good. Those lucky Burlingtonians who have less and less taxes to pay every year. Well, that's not the case, because each time we sustain this growth, we're talking about a percentage of a percentage. So this chart was not made by me. I am not this skilled. This was created by the Burlington data team that works within, it's a sub-department of the planning department. They took Burlington's grand list and they controlled for reappraisal. So PBR just showed you South Burlington pre and post appraisal. This is the real value of the grand list controlled for the reappraisal, which happened in 2022. So that's this missing year here. The percentage growth, not from revaluation, but from development and improvement, only ever hit 2% one time in that period of 200% increase in housing development. Okay, and now we're going to move to example 2, which demonstrates the revenue neutral effect of revaluation, not talking about revaluation after development.
I'm just curious what your takeaway is from that.
That it is really hard to grow the grand list. It requires this really sustained effort to improve and develop property, to build capacity in the grand list. Because we don't just want to grow the value of the dollar value of the grand list. We want to grow the true value in the grand list. And that doesn't happen fast. The change in the dollar, the market factor change on a grand list is fast, too fast. We're all feeling that. 10% a year, 20% a year, 40% during the height of the pandemic. The value change in the grand list from growth is slow and arduous. That's my takeaway. So.
Yeah, thank you. I've looked at this issue of growing the grand list for years. Way back when I was a select person in Deptford, and I agree. It's really difficult, and there are a lot of different reasons. I mean, you can't pick one and watch it, community by community. So I'm agreeing with you that it is remarkably difficult.
Thank you for that response. So now we're going to look at Stowe, who went through a reappraisal process recently, also known as a mass reappraisal. Typically, we call it right now a municipal-wide reappraisal. So is this your left? If you're looking at this, this is your left. Okay. So on the left, you see blue through orange. That's the grand list amount. On the right, blue through orange, that's the property tax rate for the combined property tax rate with state and municipal together. So when Stowe completed a municipal-wide reappraisal in fiscal year 2024, the grand list value jumped from 2 billion to 5.5 billion. So literally overnight, they completed the reappraisal. They certified the grand list on April 1st. The bottom line number was 2 billion. Now it's 5.5 billion. Obviously, no one built 3 billion in infrastructure and housing the night before April 1st. That was from the reappraisal process, which is a market-driven factor on the grand list value. Because state law requires revenue neutral reappraisal, the tax rate went down by about the same factor. So, and this was we all remember 2024, it's in our recent memory. This was a really difficult budget year for Stowe school budget. There was a really dramatic real budget increase for the school budget. So despite that, the property tax rate still went down by almost half, 2.43 to 1.33 combined state and municipal property tax rate. So if we look at the orange column, what is this? Turquoise? Turquoise is 2023, orange is 2024, or sorry, turquoise is 2024, orange is 2025 fiscal year. Grand list doubles. Go back over here, the tax rate, tax rate gets cut in half. So if you are a resident of Stowe who owned the same house before and after April 1st, the dollar amount that you paid to the ed fund and to the municipal general fund did not change significantly. The value of your home on the grand list doubled.
Is it,
I was just wondering, because what we've told people that are having a reappraisal is, well, you know, about a third of the properties are going to be worth more after adjusting for the CLA, about a third are going to be about the same, and a third are going to be worth less after the adjustment from the CLA before the reappraisal. What's your experience with that across towns?
I appreciate that question. I feel like it's taking us far afield of where we're going.
I'm just
on
thinking
this.
about, yeah, all right, fine. I don't have to have an answer.
Super short in the year of 2025, that's no longer the case.
Okay,
It's,
all above.
And are you
Have
just
another.
using the homestead rate, not the non-homestead rate?
I used the homestead rate only, but this information is really easily, I use Stowe because they like, it's right there. You can easily interpret it for yourself. They have both and then they have them together.
We've spent a lot of,
Yeah,
I mean, the whole, like, the basic math is that you're trying to raise an amount of money, and so if the base goes up, the rate goes down. If the base goes down, the rate goes up, because you're trying to raise a certain amount of money.
right.
Yeah, that's, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, not rocket science.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
Okay. Moving forward. So if revaluation grows the value, but not the capacity, then that begs the question, how do we grow the capacity? I represent municipal government. Municipal government is particularly interested in the ways to grow tax capacity that are within the municipality's control and existing authority. Me, in my role for VLCT, am also interested in the levers that the state government can pull to help municipalities grow grand list tax capacity at the local level, and I'm here to advocate for those. So pretend in this slide, back to the left, we have one parcel. This is one parcel with one family. It begins as a 10-acre lot, single-family home. It is within a low-density residential zoning district by municipal bylaw, and it is subject to Act 250 regulation. There are lots of homes like this all across Vermont. Maybe some folks here live in one that meets this description. In the before times, we would just have to sit and wait for that homeowner or property owner to make a decision to make improvements to that property that could add real value to that property. And that lever could only be pulled by the property owner. Together, we have worked over the last few years to make some really significant changes in the approach to land use law and planning in Vermont at the local and the state level. And those changes are now in effect. So we have inherently added value by creating development potential for that existing property, residential property, because now we're going to say this one box of 10 acres is within a tier 1A district. It is now Act 250 exempt. The municipality has taken action to upzone. So it's moved that parcel into a high density mixed use district, zoning district. And maybe for sake of argument, they've gone above and beyond and they've attacked the small lot minimum. And now there is a very low small lot minimum. Now we've created an opportunity that that private homeowner can choose to take or not take to essentially subdivide the property for future redevelopment. Together to make all this happen, we had to have municipal government working with state government, and we had to have several actions of the voters of the town to make these regulatory changes at the local level. Now we get to the middle. The property owner may now be incentivized to do just that, to subdivide some or all of their property and to transfer that property to sell it or to go into partnership with a developer or to even create their own sort of development LLC for the purpose of development of that property. I'll just point out that also according to recent legislative action, they have now just cha-chinged into state revenues, right? We're already getting a new value because they're now subject to that property, enhanced property transfer tax. So what's left to do? How do we keep adding value to this new property, which is now 5 properties? the municipality now can do a lot to enhance, again, the inherent real value of that property by bringing municipal infrastructure that is necessary for future development to these new parcels that have been literally added as lines on the grand list. So they can bring out drinking water, they can bring out sewer, they can enhance the pedestrian infrastructure for safe crossings, and they can take a one-way road and widen it and make it a two-way road, right? They can add recreation, sort of surface level improvements, protected bike lanes, park benches, shade trees, rain gardens. Now this is like a really valuable parcel that someone's really gonna want to redevelop. So then that brings us, and again, each of these things take actions of the town and actions of the voters to make those investments, to go pursue those permits, to get an RFP out, to hire a contractor, to expend the public money to now build the infrastructure. So we've done that. Now we have a really valuable property that is going to look really good to a developer. Also, we are all already making more money. There is tax increment created by this work that the municipality has put more in that has increased the value on the municipal and the state grand list. So as of April 1st, maybe now next year, because if you're a working partnership, it's going to be January 1st. These values have gone up and the property tax bills have gone out and they're going to be higher. So last step, someone built homes and now we have dramatically increased the real property tax capacity of this once sort of locked in 10-acre low density lot.
Which would lower everyone's property taxes, not create more revenue.
I think those are synonymous actions depending on the policy decisions made at the state and local level.
No, I didn't know that was the answer. I thought the answer was, then those said that there's a grid and in the grid of the list of grand list of properties on the grand list, you'll then add house A, house B, house C, house D. Those houses get added to the grand list. We're between reappraisals now, just we're reappraised. Those houses get added to the grand list. They are at an appraisal of $100,000 each. And when the reappraisal happens again, there's a greater number of dollars on the grand list.
Correct.
And then
the policy makers, the legislative bodies of the town for its own budget and tax rate can decide. Do we grow business expenditures because we can now, because we've added tax capacity? Do we want to hire more police officers? Do we want to improve older wastewater infrastructure that's not in this new neighborhood?
I got myself confused.
Yeah.
The actual, let's say the grand list, the whole grand list was $1 million a year when they first.
Yeah, like $1 billion,
Now-
but yeah.
Well,
Yeah. But, yeah.
And then these 5 houses go on and it's $1,500,000.
Yep.
And then when everything's reappraised, because it has to be revenue neutral. The different values are changed around, but no more revenue is raised. Then no more, it doesn't make, at that
Yeah,
point.
so we'll go
it's
back.
revenue neutral. Nobody has to pay, everybody's based on their reappraisal, people might pay a different amount, but the total amount collected for tax revenue is the same. That's what I understand.
And Samantha, I appreciate that. I don't want us to go backwards in the presentation because
Great.
I want to make sure we have time to talk to Beth.
Yeah. So that would be the full timeline of events. But that new added tax capacity doesn't go away in the reappraisal process. It is just now subject to reappraisal
Yeah,
because it is a parcel on the grand list.
that's
Yeah, okay. So moving forward. So why do municipalities want tax increment financing? I know you just said not to go backwards, but I forgot to say this. What we're talking about today is how do we get from the middle box, property owner, subdivision, transfer of property, to the next box to the right, infrastructure, project site improvement. That's what municipalities want to know. That's what they spent decades trying to figure out. That's what they have gone to the map for many town votes, many select board meetings, many reelection campaigns. And what we're proposing to you, to this committee, is to achieve that investment that enables this growth in tax capacity, that helps build better, safer places to live in Vermont, is to do that through a new tax increment financing authority for municipalities that is project specific, that is not the big TIF district. The reason that the current proposal that I may use this word again in the future, and you'll certainly hear a lot about next week, is called CHIP. But this concept has been around for a long time. Municipalities have asked for this for a long time. And many advocates before me have attempted to articulate its value. So there are many reasons. This is a non-exhaustive list. These are the most important ones. Number one, it does not require a state appropriation. Municipalities acknowledge and respect that we are in lean, challenging times with the state budget. They are not hanging their hopes on future appropriations to them to build infrastructure. Tax increment financing authority does not require a state appropriation. The second reason is it also does not require a municipal tax rate increase, and it does not require a water or sewer rate increase for those public service users who live in the town now before the development happens. It does grow other non-property tax revenues, which are increasingly important to municipal budgets and absolutely part of the state's own dynamic budget setting process. It increases state and local tax capacity, property tax capacity specifically, in a sustainable way for the long term. Although some of the new tax increment is temporarily diverted from their designated funds, the long-term sustainable effect is a significant increase in the property tax value, as we have just previously discussed. So what could these non-property tax revenues be? Again, this is a non-exhaustive list. You, more than anyone, know that the ways and means of the state are many. Some may feel infinite on some days, not on other days. But these are, I think, some of the types of state revenues and local revenues that will increase if more development happens that is mixed use in our downtown areas specifically. So municipal revenues, for the most part, are largely property tax based or property taxes. There are some other more nominal or de minimis types of local revenues that happen in these growth centers in downtown, such as parking, gross receipts that generate local option taxes. Of course, there's permit fees for any permit process. There are user fees. More people is more kids in summer camps, which is more user fees for the Parks Department. Absolutely, every time you build a building on a municipal water and sewer line, you are adding new customers for the municipal utility, and those rates go up. And then some municipalities have their own special, unique tax and fee authority that they have established at some point in the past that could increase depending on the type of commercial enterprise that might be included. And then on the state side, you definitely, when you make a new business and people go to work there, you're increasing payroll taxes. When new people are able to move to Vermont and take a job that's available, you're increasing income taxes, including corporate for the new commercial businesses that are created. Maybe most importantly for this discussion, when you're creating first floor retail in downtown areas, certainly sales and use and meals and rooms taxes will go up, which are a revenue stream to the ed fund. And then others, we've already covered utility. I'm thinking of efficiency charges on your utility bill. So even if you have a Vermont family that's living multi-generationally, kids came home from college and they're living at home, that might not be a new Vermonter that moves into a new house. It might be a Vermonter that's been here all along, but you're definitely getting new utility fees. You're getting new water and sewer fees. you're getting new property taxes when you create a new house.
This was confusing me before on that slide.
Mhm.
You're not getting new fees. The usage is greater. So you're.
Oh, you're not setting a new fee,
Right,
you're collecting fees from new payers.
you're collecting usage.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then, well, I don't understand the water rates and the sewer rates. I thought enough. Maybe it's not that important, but I see where, you're gonna collect more user fees when people are using, the theaters more, the movies more.
Great.
But the water and sewer rates, it's not that the rates are going up, it's just that you are using more.
The rates are probably going down. These are, this list is like the type of tax or fee, not like the thing, the payment. Yeah,
It seems like this is illustrative and we don't need to.
Okay.
yes, thank you. So the next, I'm almost there, I'm in the home stretch. I attempted to maybe address some questions that have come up through your discussions related to prior testimony. So why do municipalities specifically want this for infrastructure? Because we could come to you and ask for tax increment authorities for all sorts of things, like to address the increasing cost of healthcare, to help solve our issues delivering public service at the local or public safety at the local level. But we're asking for this for infrastructure that builds housing. One reason, just to not assume it's self-evident, is from the municipal's perspective, the use of property tax to grow property tax is logical. That is a logical revenue source to assign to the expense, which is infrastructure for new property taxes to grow. But again, it does not use state appropriation. It does not increase local taxes or rates. Oh, wait, sorry. This is a repeat slide. Moving on. How is project-based tax increment financing different from big TIF, as it's now fondly called in the building? So project-based tax increment is not for a district. It is for one or more than one contiguous parcel. But the important thing is it's a single development, a single permitted development being built by a single developer. The big difference that I think you would care most about is it incentivizes a municipality to service the debt as fast as possible and get its own increment back. Big TIF incentivizes the opposite. Big TIF incentivizes growing the increment, holding onto it, and spending it for as long as statutorily enabled. Little TIF, AKA CHIP, the municipality is going to see that new property valuation on that new grand list, and they're going to be like, we want that. How do we get that? We pay off the debt as soon as possible. So another big, very important difference is that it's achievable for rural small communities in a way that big TIF just really will never be.
And once we're picking up Chick next week, I'd really like you to come in and actually talk about the administrative
Absolutely.
opportunities, issues.
Yeah.
challenges.
I stayed away from like the programmatic
Thank
comments.
you very much for that.
But we would love to do that because there's a couple specific lines that we need to protect in order to meet that need. So it also doesn't require this long-term ambitious growth strategy. So even if you have a municipality that is well-resourced, has lots of technical expertise, has a municipal attorney, has a municipal planning office, they may just not have a big long-term plan for growth. And if they don't have that big long-term plan for growth in a big area of their municipality, big TIF makes no sense for them to undertake, right? And another important difference here from the current proposal that's moving that we'd be happy to come talk more about is that in this model, the developer can issue the debt initially. And so especially again, for small towns that have a cash flow problem that mostly rely on property taxes, this could be a really big advantage that removes one of the burdens of doing big TIF. Now, this is a question we've heard asked and hopefully can help respond to, which is from the municipality perspective, why is a tax increment authority superior for infrastructure as opposed to grant making, state or federal grant making, tax credit programs, which we use with great effect to subsidize housing now, tax stabilization, which has been proposed in other committees for many years as well, just like capping the OTV rather than taking the increment and investing it for a short period of time, or other types of direct subsidy that the state could choose to make with its money. Again, I'm going to repeat this. It does not use a state appropriation. We don't want to hang our hat on the need for appropriation.
Can you help me explain that to my voters? Because we just got flogged at the polls for setting the average statewide property tax.
Yep.
And we have a JFO that won't even put a price tag on what we're potentially about to put into the ed fund in terms of cost. So how is the ed fund not a state appropriation? I mean, if that line
So
there in all of your slides, I would be able to listen to you, but I can't even listen to you because it's like, it doesn't make.
I hope you're listening and thank you for asking the question.
I'm trying.
So
But I
the,
acknowledge that it's cost. And school districts are municipalities, but they're not part of.
I'm not discussing a school district. I'm
but
discussing an
they-
infrastructure project that a municipality is undertaking.
I understand.
So if a
And you're
municipal,
not-
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Over
I
here.
mean, but help me understand
Representative
how
Holcomb.
it's not, help me understand how
Representative Holcomb.
it's not state appropriation.
Hi. We're gonna let our witness answer the question.
Yes, better language.
it's not a matter of language, I think. It's a real difference in the mechanism and the ability that you have as state government in supporting infrastructure investment. So if a municipality has a sewer line, they want to separate a combined water, wastewater, stormwater line, because unless they do that, they can't build anything more on top of it and they can't let any more wastewater in the pipe. If that project costs $5 million, they have some current options to come up with $5 million. They could go to A&R and compete against other towns for clean water grant. They could go to bond, which requires a high 2/3 vote at the municipal level and will significantly increase water and sewer rates for the town for a period of time. They can wait for a developer to come along that really wants to build over this old failing combined sewer line, and they can make the developer pay for it. That puts the cost of that $5 million project on the development, which is passed through to the new renters or homeowners that hope, or businesses that move into that development. When a municipality has a critical infrastructure need and an urgent goal to build housing as well, they would like a taxing authority or a revenue generating authority which belongs to them. They would over the option to go for a state appropriated fund, which in most cases does not happen through block grant, happens through a competitive grant making process. That they could engineer the project, permit the project, secure local reserves that are grant matches. They could get the vote for a portion of the bond that they think voters will approve because it doesn't add too much to the property tax bill. They could prepare all of that. That takes years and a lot of political capital. And then they could go for that clean water bond grant and not get it. And as the challenges to the state revenues broadly continue in this really inflationary, wacky time that you all are making really hard decisions during, that's going to get harder. We anticipate that it will be harder and more competitive as the need increases at the local level, the pressures on state revenues increase in here, we're not gonna rely on that appropriation to clean water that then goes to a grant that is then administered by the town and they have to be compliant with for a long time. We would like a new authority that we can trigger for a priority project that is supported by municipal planning and bylaw. Does that help understand?
Representative Odie, quick, because we need to
I-
wrap up this testimony in just a minute or
I'm
two.
not fond of that first bullet point either. I think the idea that it's trying to get across the, is in big TIF, once it's approved, they have a predictable repayment over 20 years program so that they know that they're going to get a benefit over those 20 years that they've got locked in. And that this small TIF is not requiring an annual commitments over time through state appropriations to complete a project or splinter taxes like the property transfer tax that gets not withstood.
Great.
It's a way, that's what it is. That's what I think it is. Instead of saying not using state appropriation. Don't you think that's
I'm sorry, isn't that what you just read? It's not requiring a state appropriation or a splinter tax. It's diverting future tax revenue temporarily towards the debt.
well, yeah.
That's what it's doing, which is, we can disagree. I do not see how that's an appropriation. If a municipality did that through its own tax abatement, that would not be required in the budget to be passed by voters as an appropriation of public funds. That would be an authority created by the municipality that it could choose to use to enable a type of project.
I think some people think of a tax expenditure as an appropriation and some don't, and
Yeah.
that's fine. Let us move on to the next slide.
So last point here that we haven't yet covered in the discussion is that this is not a chicken and egg that we need to like fight over. State land use law, the state's own permitting regimes through A&R, through Act 250, and municipal permitting regimes, of which there are many, are very clear. The infrastructure has to be there before you can get the permit to develop at density. So if the municipality, again, has this urgent rising policy goal to realize the development for housing, it has to address the infrastructure first, or the permit never happens, the project never happens. So we can remove the sort of will and desire of the developer. That's not the concern here. It is very clear in the regulation and permitting regimes that are real and true in Vermont. We need the infrastructure to be addressed, whether that's stormwater, wastewater, sewer, roads, access, before we can contemplate developing at any real density. And then lastly, this is really just like, I think a picture is worth 1,000 words. These are two maps that I saw that really changed the way I think about a lot of things, a lot of areas of housing and land use policy. So this one comes from a report that was commissioned by Burlington maybe 2 years ago, following their reappraisal, actually. And they wanted to know, is there more that they can do through ordinance and through charter within the city to make their municipal property tax system more equitable for all types of property owners. This is just it's a great report. I recommend pulling it up. It was done by a firm called Urban 3.
We've had them testify.
Awesome. They're super cool. Yeah. So in Burlington, 55% of the land area is tax exempt. And that is not tax exempt by an act of the municipality, that is tax exempt through other state and federal policy. I happen to know, because I used to work there, 40% of the land area of the city of Burlington is under conservation easement and is open, available public land. So there's some 15% in the middle that is like other, like the university. So in this one, gray is tax exempt, green is taxable. This is my town. Anybody know what it is?
Granville.
No?
Wow.
Hancock.
Yeah.
And so the colors are opposite here. This is from my RPC, most recent regional plan. The colors are opposite. Green here is conserved, permanently conserved public land. The grayish tannish color is private, unconserved, non-tax exempt. And then can you barely see the little red blotch and the little tiny dots? Maybe I have to like zoom in. This little red blotch is the village, the designated village. And then these little speckles are houses. Hancock has about 200 houses and about 38 square miles. We are 90% under conservation. So our opportunity for, and Hancock has lost grand list in each of the last 2 decades and in most of the last 5 years. We have lost parcels from the grand list, flood, poverty, fire, conservation action. So yeah, like homes falling into disrepair because the family is experiencing poverty and is unable to maintain a safe, habitable home, and then it no longer exists. Yeah. So we have real limited options here. We have to make smart growth decisions. Municipalities want to make smart growth decisions. They want to stabilize tax rates. They want to deliver excellent public service. They want homes that are safe and affordable and accessible to everyone that they serve. And the options for where to put them and how to tax them, if you're a municipal official, are very narrow. And so that sort of puts the urgency and enthusiasm behind this request for this new tax increment authority. And that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate your time, and we will see you next week.
I had one more question. So are you saying where all the cattle are along the docks, but those are, a lot of them are 10-acre lots and then could be made.
Oh, there's a variety. My town doesn't have, am I out for sure?
Yeah.
I can't, my screen froze. We don't have zoning and bylaw, so there's everything from like a half acre to, my home is under an acre, my next door neighbor's is 65. Yeah, so it's all sorts of stuff.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. We have 3 folks from VEPSI with us today. I am really grateful to all 3 of you for rearranging your schedules and joining us today. We are talking about sort of TIF writ large as a way to prepare us better to talk about project-based gifts next week when we have a bill in front of us. But thought it would be, since you have a large role to play in both of those things, thought it'd be helpful to understand your existing role before we move on to your future role next week. Though you will be getting an invitation to come back next week. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I have a list of who's testifying when of the 3 of you, but you're welcome to self-organize, and you have 45 minutes to communicate with us in whatever order you'd like.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for letting us all participate by Zoom today, first of all. I do plan to be in your committee in person next week, and really look forward to having these conversations with you about generally TIF, and then next week CHIP, but also today, as I understood, our collective assignment was to talk about VEPSI's role in administering the TIF program. And so in order to do that the most efficient way, I'll introduce myself. I'm Jessica Hartleben. I am the Executive Director of the Vermont Economic Progress Council. I have served in this capacity since January of 2024. And with me today, I have the chair of the Vermont Economic Progress Council, and I have the program manager, and I will let them both just briefly introduce themselves. So, John?
Good morning, John Russell. I am the chair of the Vermont Economic Progress Council. I've been the chair for about 2 years, and Chair Kornheiser and committee members, thank you for having us.
Nice to see you, John.
Thank you.
And I believe Ellie is also on.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Ellie Beckett, program manager for VEPSI. Like Jessica, I've also been in this role since January of last year. I'm responsible for doing a lot of the day-to-day admin work, and so happy to answer any questions that you may have about that.
Thank you.
So to get us started, I did create a quick slide show for us to review. I apologize that the committee may not have the benefit of having it, but it is now shared with your committee, and am available to answer any questions given the constraints of time today about Big TIF prior to your taking up CHIP next week. So Ellie is going to run the slideshow, and I think she is going to try and put it up on the screen now. So just to, yeah, we can go to the next slide here. VEPC's role is established by the legislature. So you tell us how we are going to administer two programs in the state of Vermont. One is the Vermont Employment Growth Incentive, and the other is the statewide TIF program. VEPC does not promote or market TIF. That is specifically outlined in our bylaws, and the advocacy for TIF and VEGgie programs lies with the local RDCs and the RPCs. They are non-voting members of our council, and they're the ones that provide the on-the-ground in their local communities promotion and advocacy of the utilization of these two programs that are available to us in our state. VEPC's intent, as directed by you, is to evaluate, authorize, and oversee TIF applications in addition to the substantial change requests that come before the council. The council is supported by myself as the executive director and Ellie Beckett, who is the program manager. We receive our administrative support in that for budgeting purposes and other financial purposes, that fund is supported by the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. You will see VEPC included in their budget, but we are, as legislatively created, an independent council for the state of Vermont to serve as the administrators of these two programs.
And then we have a quick question. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Sure. Yep. No, that's fine. And please interrupt me because I can't, you all look like little pins on my screen. So please just chime in.
Thank you. Well, I'm wondering, how is the way VEPC relates to TIF different from or the same as the way the EB5 thing happened? Because I heard something somewhere saying,
Yeah.
you know, how is this might be a conflict.
Yes. Yep. So I would be happy to answer that question. I think that I heard that comment from the auditor yesterday, and I can say that in my year and a half of experience, EB5 was promoted and marketed, as I understand, by the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. That is, and I'm not as familiar with EB5. So I don't want to provide misinformation. But what I will say is that the difference, as I see it, is that we are an independent council. We do not market or promote TIF. We also have the guardrails of our state legislature that tell us what we are allowed to do and what we are not allowed to do. We are authorized by the legislature and required by the legislature to provide you annual reports about the TIF districts. And we are made up of an independent council that has 11 members, of which some of your committee members have been members and have served. And those members make up 2 General Assembly members of our 11-member council. They're currently Representative Abby Duke and Senator Wendy Harrison. In addition, we are also required to go through ethics trainings. We are also provided to comply with all of the open meeting laws. We are very transparent in what we provide to the public with relations to TIF applications, TIF reporting, all materials relating to new TIF districts, and any information that the municipalities provide relating to any substantial change requests. We take our responsibilities very seriously, and we do have to come back to you, the legislature, each year to report on these TIF districts and how VEPSI is conducting itself. So I think just in my 1.5 years of experience, I think those are significant differences in the framing that the state auditor's office provided yesterday to perceived conflicts of interest. In addition, we also have a conflict of interest policy within our bylaws, and our bylaws are posted publicly on our website. And I can let the chair provide any additional context.
We, thank you, Jessica. We operate, the guardrails that are set up are the legislation that has come out of your body, and the rules that VEPSI has written and been approved to operate under the TIF district. I cannot speak to EB5. I'm not familiar with the details of the program, but we review each and every year the financing plan for each TIF district as part of our monitoring. And in the past years, we've taken enforcement actions against municipalities who have, how shall I say this, not used the funds properly or did things with funds that they weren't supposed to. We sought to recover those funds on behalf of the Ed Fund. We're stewards of the Ed Fund, and we need to make sure these TIF districts perform properly and perform over the long run for the benefit of the state of Vermont. That's our goal, and we pay very close attention to our guardrails. Since Jessica has come on board, I have a resource running the meetings to keep us on track and within the guardrails that the legislature has set for us.
Thank you, and I've really appreciated the renewed leadership from both of you over at VEPSI.
Thank you.
We want to go on to the third slide. That would be great.
Yeah, that's great. So this just speaks to more about being the neutral objective administrator of the program. And I believe that we did talk about the first 3 bullets just over the last 10 minutes. In addition, we do receive support from the executive branch economist. Jeff Carr provides myself as this one half of the staff, and also assists in helping me to write the staff reports, which we present to the council regarding new TIF districts, on in-depth economic analysis that must happen as a result of creation of a new TIF district. Jeff Carr provides us the feasibility analysis and the marketability analysis, and also the reasonableness of these TIF districts through the financing plans that the municipalities present to us when creating new TIF districts, or also when a substantial change request is presented to the council. So it's really important to know that we do receive that additional outside support from one of the premier experts, I think, in the state of Vermont on doing these types of projects, the analysis of these types of projects.
One more question, Jessica.
Yep.
Thank you very much. So it says staff receives administrative, legal, and budgeting support through ACCD.
That's right.
So we did hear testimony yesterday, and I do remember who gave it this time. And it was about being required by law to get legal advice from the Attorney General's office. Can you make comments about that?
Sure. Again, I do think that those were comments that were made from the state auditor's office. And I can tell you that I was not the executive director during those times. But if I'm remembering correctly, my understanding is that one of the differences of opinions, the Attorney General's office provides legal advice to state agencies, all state agencies. And I know that in St. Albans, there was some sort of a disagreement about the opinion that was provided by, at the time, the Assistant Attorney General, Josh Diamond, and his understanding of the use of the TIF, and then also the ACCD legal counsel who provides some support to VEPC. I don't know the details of that. I know that the issue has been resolved, and I would hope that we would be able to move forward from that happening in the future. In addition to the most recent use of the state auditor's request for an opinion, that was actually a joint request that VEPC, through the prior executive director, made with the state auditor's office in consultation with regard to the use of bond premiums, I believe. And the Attorney General's office provided an opinion. The opinion stated that the Attorney General's office made recommendations regarding the use of changing state statutes and rules if there were ambiguities related to the state statutes and the TIF rules, and that it was more appropriate for the legislation to be changed than for the opinions. That was her opinion. And the state auditor did not like that opinion. And my understanding is that there's been some additional litigation as a result of that. So
we don't have time for.
Yeah, we don't have time for that. You can, it's all public. You can look at that. I would say that in terms of using the Attorney General's office and the ACCD staff attorney, if we need to, we can take those proper channels, but we are guided. I think I'm also a licensed attorney. I take my role as following the law and the Constitution very seriously, and we receive your direction and we take that very seriously. So we, at the end of this slideshow presentation, we do have 3 technical changes that we would like to see to the big TIF statute. And I think that we can only improve. We can't look backwards. We can only improve and make this process as transparent as possible, and also to rebuild those relationships and those connections so that we are rebuilding the trust that you should have with this council and with myself as the executive director in giving us the great responsibility of managing this program.
Thank you very much for that answer.
You're welcome.
I'm going to ask folks to save questions until the end so that you can get through all of your slides.
Okay. Thank you. And I apologize if I'm happy to try to come back, but I know we're really limited. So I'll try to talk fast.
I don't want you to apologize, and I do hope you can come back next week.
Yeah, I'm absolutely coming back next week. We've been in touch with your committee assistant. So let's go on to the next slide. We are TIF is seen as a long-term investment in the education fund. If you just look at the annual view, and I believe there's been a lot of testimony about this, and I don't want to belabor this any longer, but TIF looks at the long-term benefits of making 20-year investments in infrastructure projects that will help create private development that has not been able to occur. These completed districts grow the tax base permanently, and they improve blighted properties that have sat underdeveloped, underutilized, and undervalued for many years. TIF supports sustained ed fund growth over time. And then next slide. So this is all not new information. The ed fund receives at least 30% of the new increment annually. Based on data that we've looked at, in many cases, it exceeds background growth. And we do not think that it is correct that the ed fund sees no gains during the TIF period. Next slide. So there were some comments yesterday about that the development would just occur in a different part of the state. And our experience is that the development is not likely to relocate, that municipalities are uniquely situated to make development investments that are best suited for their local communities. With respect to location specific, we don't have another Burlington waterfront in our state. If you look at what the Burlington waterfront looked like 40 years ago to what the Burlington waterfront looks like now, you would see significant transformative changes that have occurred as a result of TIF fund investments. In addition to Killington, when presenting their information to the VEPC Council, and also I believe that JFO has presented this information, demonstrated that they had this ski redevelopment planned for approximately 40 years, and that without these infrastructure improvements, specifically the water, that the development would never occur. We don't have we can't take Killington Ski Resort and put it in where I live in Bennington. It's just not going to work. In addition, South Burlington, their TIF district has created necessary housing for the University of Vermont, and that is helping to alleviate the student housing shortage that the University of Vermont is experiencing, specifically with their medical school and with some of their master's programs. The new developments and apartments that have been created, there are master leases that have been created with the University of Vermont to help bring those medical students and their families to the South Burlington area so that they can attend our medical school and then hopefully stay and help support necessary healthcare needs in our state. State planning goals are not location neutral. The statewide plan needs to be taken into consideration. Before I move on to the next slide, Chair Russell does have to unfortunately leave in a few minutes, so I would like for him to just have a quick opportunity to provide what he was planning to say today, and then I'll wrap up my slideshows.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jessica. And I apologize to the committee. I've had an appointment or meeting already scheduled. With respect to TIF and the VEPC Council, the council is we've got a lot of horsepower, a lot of experience, and some great minds on the council. And with TIF, we take our role very seriously. We're stewards of the education fund. We look at each and every application and make sure that those funds are being used for the best long-term benefit of the state of Vermont. We pay attention to the statute that we've been given. Having Jessica and having Jessica's experience and education and training behind her is a tremendous resource for the council. And we basically, we stick with the guardrails and we take very seriously our role as stewards of the education fund for the betterment and the long-term growth of the state of Vermont. The TIF program, it's a wonderful program. The communities can customize it to meet their infrastructure needs. And with the housing challenges that we have in the state, unless we fix the infrastructure, we're not going to see housing. And this is one tool in the toolbox that the communities can use to improve their infrastructure. So that's what I have to say. Any questions from the committee, I'd gladly take.
Thanks. I think we're good. Really appreciate you joining us, and thanks for coming in on such short notice.
Thank you, Chair Kornheiser. I appreciate it, and it's good to see you. It's good to see the committee. Thanks.
So, John.
Okay, so moving on, we can go back to the slideshow. I just realized that if I ever appear on Zoom again, I need to change my background because I'm still in the wintertime on May Day. So VEPC has seen TIF as a catalyst for investment. I heard yesterday, why not, how come grants just can't do this? TIF unlocks the opportunity for grants to be provided. Oftentimes grants have match requirements, and TIF can provide those match requirements to those grants that would not otherwise be available to municipalities to fund the types of infrastructure projects that are allowed within the definitions provided in our statutes. TIF also unlocks the private investment, which is necessary to make sure that we are using public dollars to leverage private investment so that we are able to create transformative communities throughout the state of Vermont. Without the TIF commitment, many projects would not proceed. And this really speaks to the but for, which I know can be a charged 2 words in that building that you all are sitting in right now. But I will say, having just gone through the Rutland TIF district application process, it became very clear to myself and to the council that these projects would not proceed without TIF funding. The major barriers being, I wrote them down because I thought they were this important to share with the committee. The tools from tax increment financing for the TIF district are the final pieces that are needed to overcome the most common barriers to private development in the city of Rutland. Those being environmental contamination, sewer, water, stormwater system upgrades, the site preparation needed, building demolitions, pedestrian and vehicular access, and streetscape upgrades. In addition, there was a hotel that has been that burned to the ground 50 years ago, has been basically sitting, there's a parking lot that's been sitting there vacant for 50 years. And but for the TIF district being created, there would not have been the opportunity to invest in very specific downtown hotel that was desperately needed, as evidenced by the city of Rutland's planning, to support the revitalization of that downtown district. In looking at the analysis of that, Jeff Carr opined that that the TIF application for the city of Rutland was the most strong application he had seen about the need for meeting the but-for test that he's ever seen in reviewing these TIF district applications. To me, in my 1.5 years of doing this work, it became very evident that for that district in particular, those projects would not proceed but for the TIF being generated. In addition, these TIF districts provide a catalyst for the critical foundation of complex funding structures within the state of Vermont. Prior to taking on the executive director role at VEPC, I was the staff attorney for the Department for Economic Development, and I looked at many of the funding stacks that were created as a part of the Community Recovery and Revitalization Program, and also reviewed the municipal applications that were provided to VEPC under the CRRP program. They are like a patchwork quilt of funding, and they require all funding sources in order to make those projects go. TIF is just one piece in that patchwork quilt. Next slide. So I understand that there is a lot of confusion about whether to use TIF or whether an appropriation should be made. And I acknowledge that Vermont's property tax infrastructure is really unique. Property taxes include the education portion, and I understand that those are pooled into the education fund. But I do think that there is a fundamental difference between a state appropriation and the TIF districts. And that is this, that a TIF increment is not a state appropriation because it doesn't involve the direct allocation or expenditure of funds by the General Assembly. TIF operates by redirecting property tax revenues generated by the growth within the grand list of that designated TIF district. And the increment is then retained locally by the town to finance the infrastructure improvements that support projects that are aligned with the statutory guardrails that you have set forth in Title 24. The retention is explicitly authorized by statute, and it is subject to approval and oversight by not only VEPC, but the Department of Tax. And I was really grateful that Chloe was able to go before us today, because we do work as a partner with the Department of Tax in the TIF district administration. I realize that they provide us with significant information and data that helps us to administer this program. In addition, as Chloe has stated, we are in the process of updating the TIF rules, and we have worked with the tax department and their legal counsel, and we are also planning to meet with the state auditor's office on Friday. This has been a priority of mine. My hope is that we will make it through the process of ICAR and LCAR by the end of this year so that we can update the TIF rule, which has not been updated since 2015. Back to my difference between TIF and an appropriation. The education increment retention affects the distribution of revenue within the statewide system, but it's not a state appropriation for these two reasons. First, the funds never pass through the state budget or the general fund process. And your General Assembly does not allocate the dollars on an annual basis. The retention of the TIF revenues are built into a mechanism that is part of our TIF program. It functions as a targeted reinvestment tool that's governed by statute, and it's not governed by any discretionary legislative spending. So in other words, while TIF increment may reduce contributions to the ed fund in the short term, it does so within a legally prescribed framework that does not constitute an appropriation under the state funds of Vermont's budgetary or constitutional definitions. So I hope that that answers your question, Representative Holcomb, and that we can work with your committee moving forward to grapple with these very important and often emotionally charged policy issues and debates. And we think that those policy debates actually help us in being able to administer the program more efficiently and with the guardrails that you have set forth. Next slide. We have seen in our TIF districts that federal funding is unpredictable. It's especially unpredictable in these times. Federal grants more specifically are also competitive, and the current environment that we find ourselves in, we are seeing grants being taken away from municipalities, and that this is not a unique issue just to TIF districts, but really throughout programs statewide. TIF offers local control and predictability, and TIF provides a reliable substitute for the long-term municipal infrastructure planning that is necessary for the creation of these TIF districts. Next slide. Okay, so these are the proposed changes to the current TIF statute, and I realize that these are very small print, and I actually, in order to see it myself, need to switch my glasses. I'm at that point. So the first one is relating to the definition of improvements for TIF districts. We have received requests from municipalities to include brownfield remediation and public or private flood resiliency measures. The public and private flood resiliency measures have really come from the devastating flooding that we have seen in our municipalities in 2023 and 2024. And using funding, federal funding, FEMA funding, may not be sufficient for these municipalities that have been most negatively economically impacted and had really now have been left scrambling to figure out how they're going to get their grand lists back online, specifically in the most devastatingly damaged flood areas. We would like to just make two changes, one relating to brownfield remediation. We've also seen in the brownfield remediation landscape that the cost of brownfield remediation is skyrocketing. Just in my time at the Department for Economic Development, we've seen, as the staff attorney, I saw one brownfield project go from what was a $2 million cleanup to a $5 million cleanup in a matter of 6 months. It's really just a sign of the times that we seem to be living in. In addition, we would like to see improvement include the funding of debt service interest payments for up to 4 years instead of 2 years. And the rationale for that is that as these new TIF districts come online, given the current economic climate that we see ourselves in, and I was in a meeting recently where a municipality was told that a developer was going to have to put in a 35 to 40% contingency fee because the landscape of building infrastructure is so unknown, that if a TIF district is to be created, it may take more time to build out the infrastructure, not just for the cost, but we might have supply chain issues, and we may also have workforce issues. So giving towns flexibility to 4 years to pay on those interest payments would alleviate the stresses that the municipalities have indicated that they're feeling. The second relates to 24 VSA 1892. This aligns with the current TIF statute says that a TIF district is created when the legislative body of the municipality creates their TIF district. And that can be problematic because in the time that it takes, I will use Rutland as an example. Rutland approved through their aldermen, their TIF district, I believe it was in August or September of 2024. They did not come to VEPC for an application until January of 2025. VEPC has approved their TIF district as of April 28th of 2025. The city of Rutland would have lost a year because the OTV is set at the time under the current legislation at the time that the legislative body created the TIF district. So we think that it is more appropriate and more consistent with the process if the council's establishment of the TIF district is when the OTV should be calculated. And that would also be consistent with, just to give you a preview of what's coming in the future, this is what we have proposed in the CHIP language as well. So for me, keeping things consistent is also really helpful in administering the program, whether it's CHIP or TIF.
Questions till the end.
Oh, yeah.
And then the last one is just really quick. This 24 VSA 1894A, we would like to, so in 2023, I believe there was an amendment to the statute that said that bond anticipation notes could not be used as the first incurrence of debt, but it left silent whether they could be used as the last incurrence of debt. And I do not have time to talk to you today about bans. I don't really, in the full transparency, understand the ins and outs of the bond market. I would have Michael Gahn come and talk to you about that if you're interested. But this is just a clarification so that there's no ambiguity with administering districts as they're starting to reach their incurrence expiration, that the debt incurrence period could be extended no more than 6 months solely for the purpose of obtaining that final bond financing when voter bond authorization is granted by March 31st in the TIF district's final year of debt incurrence. So that just keeps it simple, keeps it straightforward so that municipalities that are coming up on the end of their debt incurrence period are not unclear about what the legislation reads and how the legislature would like to treat those issues.
Thanks.
Okay, I believe that I am done with my slideshow. I do have some closing thoughts, but I think I've, said each of these. We take very seriously the statutory framework by which you set for us. As Chair Russell said, we take our responsibility very seriously, and all members of the council really see their role as being stewards of the education fund. We are structured, regulated, and supported by state and local goals that target growth using very specific criteria. An example of this would be with the Winooski TIF district, which has recently ended, and I can certainly provide, or I would encourage you, if you want to hear about the Winooski district and the success that they have had, to talk to the folks from Winooski, because I think they're the first project in quite some time that has completed their TIF project, and the revitalization of their downtown has been significant.
Thanks. Can folks go 5 minutes over 12 o'clock?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I can
You
see
may
you all
now.
again.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Representative Odie, you have a question?
Thank you. I do. In the section 1892, where you cross off municipal legislative body, but the city would still vote whether or not they want a TIF district. But
Oh,
it's
yes.
just the set at the time here.
It's a timing issue, yes. It's not changing the structure of how creation of TIF districts works. It's just creating the timing of when the when VEPC would approve it.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much for joining us today, and look forward to seeing you next week. I appreciate all your time and flexibility in this.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing all of you in person next week. So thank you so much.
Yeah,
No
absolutely. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Okay, folks. We are taking off our TIF hats. We are putting on our S51 hats. And I'm wondering if anyone would like to make a motion to amend S51. with version, I was gonna say which version, what are we? Thank you, Kirby.
Make a motion to amend S 51 with.
No, we're just gonna wait till we have the version.
You.
Version draft version two.
Okay, thank you. Representative Wozniak.
Motion to amend S 51 with version 1.2 of amendment.
Thank you. Representative Wozniak moves that we are amending S51 with the amendment that is version 1.2. Any discussion?
So this is the one that includes the tax to water, is it 25,000 or 30,000?
25, phasing out at 30,
Uh-huh.
which is
okay.
why you had a question, because it's both.
Okay. Okay, so this is the version that includes that.
It includes the veterans benefit and and the income limit on the pension. Set in the CTC. It also includes the CTC, the EITC, and the Social Security expansion.
Thank you.
Yes. Any further discussion?
Yes, just for what it's worth, I think this is a really good step in the right direction, and I hope that, in coming years that we can expand the amount of, both the amount of the credit and the amount of veterans eligible for the credit. But I very much appreciate this step in the right direction.
Thanks. Yes.
As a legislator who has submitted this legislation for 10 bienniums, I appreciate your leadership, cooperation, and compromise.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Appreciate everyone diving in deep on this. Yeah.
And I would comment that I agree that what we have proposed here in terms of the military retirement exemption is very reasonable in terms of hitting the bulk of those military retirees who could benefit from this. And I think will help, hopefully, with one of the goals of retaining and attracting some retirees to join our workforce in Vermont.
I hope that it also helps the Guard recruit. And I'm so grateful for inclusion of veterans in this. I just think that we have to do all we can for veterans.
I think we have a lot of homeless veterans right now, and so I'm grateful they'll have a little more resources available to them in the coming year. And I also just don't want to lose track of celebrating the child tax credit and the earned income tax credit, which I think are
That's right.
some really cutting edge policies that we have in Vermont to make our tax structure work for everyone. So with that, seeing no further discussion, if the clerk please call the roll.
First, Representative Brannigan.
Yes.
I'll vote yes. It was Representative Burkhart, Representative Feltus,
Yes.
Representative Higley,
Yes.
Representative Holcomb is not here. Representative Kimball,
Yes.
Representative Maslin.
Yep.
Representative Odie.
Yes.
Representative Wazazak.
Yes.
Representative Canfield
Yes.
and Representative Kornheiser.
Yes,
You have voted the amendment favorable 10-01.
thank you. Would anyone like to move the bill as amended?
I will love to move that bill as amended.
Representative Canfield moves S51 as amended. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, if you could please call the roll.
Representative Brannigan.
Yes. Feel like we need fireworks.
I'll vote yes. As Representative Burkhart, Representative Feltus,
Yes.
Representative Higley,
Yes.
Representative Holcomb is absent. Representative Kimball,
Yes.
Representative Maslin.
Yep.
Representative Odie. Representative Wazazak,
Yes.
Representative Canfield,
Yes.
and Representative Kornheiser.
Yes.
We have voted the bill favorable with amendment 10-01.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone. We are going to be, for all the teamwork on this, and to the staff team for all the teamwork on this, we are going to be back here after the floor at 3:10. That's when staff's available. It's not a random number. Sometimes I pull random times out to get us back in the room. This is staff. 3:10, we're going to work on H230, which is a bill from the Natural Resource and Environment Committee to do something. I don't know. We'll find out at